Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim Kelly, joined by Justin Godsey. As always, this is the Real Sports Talk presents the 30 Clubs, 30 Previews MLB special. And Justin, today we are on to the St. Louis Cardinals, a team that last year, after losing Albert Pujols, still managed to make the playoffs and make it to the NLCS, so it was an impressive season. However, in the offseason, it was a team that lost Chris Carpenter. His career is likely over due to nerve damage. Rafael Furcal is also out for the season, and David Freese will begin the season on the DL for the Cardinals as well. So, Justin, coming into the year, they certainly do have their fair share of injuries.
Yeah, I mean, this offseason with all these injuries, it's a big course of concern over at the shortstop position. You can go with Daniel Descalso, Pete Kozma, and there's also a couple of farm system guys that they could possibly go with. But when you look at who they acquired this offseason, this team was relatively quiet. They got Randy Choate, they got Ty Wigington, and that was mainly it. And this team, Ty Wigington is mainly going to be that bench role type of guy because he's coming over from the Philadelphia Phillies, where, Tim, that's your team, and he really just applied the power, and he was mainly the third base, the starting third baseman for a big part of that season.
Yeah, he was with the injuries to Placido Polanco, and I can tell you he wasn't necessarily the most impressive player over at third base. So we will begin behind the plate for this team where Yadier Molina is their catcher. He's been there since 2004 now. Last year hit a career high, 315, 22 home runs, 76 RBIs, got a big extension, and Justin even stole 12 bases. He's still probably the best fielding catcher in the MLB. So I look at him and I think that, they maybe overpaid for him in the extension, and I don't expect he's going to hit 315 or 22 home runs again, but he's become a very, very good hitter in addition to how good of a catcher he is behind the plate. He's someone that I do expect to hit close to 300 this year, hit between 15 and 20 home runs, 60 and 70 RBIs, and he really is truly, behind Buster Posey at this point, the second best catcher in the game.
Oh, absolutely. Yadier Molina really wowed us all last year. 22 home runs, 76 RBIs, about 315. And what really surprised me even more is that he stole 12 bases. That's a career high in his entire MLB career. And Yadier Molina, it's just he's overall a phenomenal catcher. He gets along with the pitchers in the bullpen, pitchers in the starting rotation, and he's a fan favorite in St. Louis. He's worth that contract extension because he's just a fan favorite in St. Louis, and he's a keeper in St. Louis.
Yeah, he is going to be a guy that is there long term, could very well end up being a career St. Louis Cardinal. And backing him up at the catcher spot is Tony Cruz, the guy who in 51 games last year hit 254 with 1 home run, 11 RBIs. Cruz is not going to be a guy that gets to see a ton of action because for the most part, on an everyday basis, we are going to see Yadier Molina behind the plate. The only times we're really going to see a ton of action for Tony Cruz are the days where you have a late Friday game and a 1 o'clock national Saturday game, something like that, where you have back-to-back games and you're looking to get Yadier Molina some rest. But for the most part, you're going to see Yadier Molina behind the plate pretty much every day. Over at first base, Alan Craig is going to be the starter. Last year in 119 games, Craig really stepped up, replaced Albert Pujols. Did he replace the production? No, but he played pretty damn well, hitting 307 with 22 home runs, 92 RBIs. He became one of the most underrated players in the game in my mind because you did not hear a ton about how he was one of the key reasons that the Cardinals were able to have almost a seamless transition even without Albert Pujols, because we knew that with Tony La Russa gone and Albert Pujols gone, that this team had to go in another direction, and Mike Matheny got a lot of credit, deservedly so, but they didn't give credit to individual players when talking about why the Cardinals were able to stay so successful last year, and one of the biggest reasons that they were able to do so was the development of Alan Craig.
The predecessor of Albert Pujols, Alan Craig, really surprised me last year. 22 home runs, 92 RBIs, batted 307. A guy who really took it to the swing. He's a phenomenal. He's a guy that's a really complicated type of hitter. He really tries to step up every time. He steps up his game to the next level every time he's up at the bat. And he quietly reached 307 last year. And I think this is a guy who's going to get more headlines on him coming into the 2013 season because last year we now know what Alan Craig it can really do when it comes to him at the plate.
Yeah, and I'm not sure he's going to be able to top that production from last year, but if he can get anywhere close, then the Cardinals are in a good position lineup-wise. Now, Matt Adams is going to be his backup over at first base. You could also see Matt Carpenter get some action, but Matt Adams is going to be the backup in 27 games. Adams hit .244 with 2 home runs, 13 RBIs last year. I think, again, in the same case as the catcher spot, you're going to see Alan Craig over there pretty much every day. Daniel Descalso is going to be the starting second baseman. Descalso enters his third full season with the third full season, I should say, with the Cardinals. In 143 games last year, he hit .227, 4 home runs, 26 RBIs. He has a good glove out in the field. I like his versatility, but I want to see him get that average back up to the .265 range that he hit a couple years ago in 2011. I think last year he hit a few more home runs, but I'd rather see that average at .264 than see the home runs come with it.
Yeah, we just hope that Daniel Descalso really, tries to improve on his average. I think the power, this is a guy who's not going to go out there and hit you, 10 home runs a year. He will go out there and get you on tots, maybe 2 to 3 a year. But the biggest part of his bat is he's just an average type of hitter. He can get you on. He can get on base. That's the biggest point here in all of Major League Baseball is just getting on base, and that's what Daniel Descalso can do. But last year his average was really low, and we just hope that he comes into it's closing in on the season. The spring training. He's really been focusing in on bringing his average up. He's getting back to the basics of baseball and getting on base and trying to raise that average up. Overall, Daniel Descalso is a phenomenal, second baseman in Major League Baseball. And, he has some good fantasy value to him. So if you guys have, Daniel Descalso in the later rounds, and he is, a bench piece, you cannot go wrong with picking him up.
No, you can't. And Ryan Jackson is going to be his guy as a backup. Ryan Jackson only played 13 games at the MLB level last year, but at the AAA level, Memphis in 117 games hit .272, 10 home runs, 47 RBI, so he's a solid backup. And if Descalso does hit at the low level that he did last year, I'm not sure it's out of the question that Ryan Jackson could potentially get a chance to become the full-time starter, or at least a platoon-type situation over at second base. Pete Kozma is a young shortstop for this team. Last year in 26 games at the MLB level, Kozma hit .333, was extremely impressive. In 2010 or 2011, he also saw some small action, but in AAA, where we really got a chance to see him last year for the entire season, he hit .232 with 11 home runs and 63 RBI. So the .333 that he hit last year is not very realistic, and it's not just that he had a bad year in AAA last year, because in 2011 he hit .214 at the AAA level. He's going to bring you some decent pop, going to drive the ball into the gaps a lot, but he's going to strike out, and he also is going to be a guy that is probably not going to hit for a very high average.
No, this is where it really comes to a course of concern for him, because Rafael Furcal, yes, he's going to be out for the entire season due to Tommy John surgery. It takes a while for players to get back into the groove of, baseball activities after Tommy John surgery. And this is where the biggest weakness on this Cardinals team is. And Pete Kozma, I'm not here to bash on Pete Kozma at all. It's just, he's not going to hit you for a high average. He's more of a bench piece. I honestly think that he should start the season down in the farm system. There's a guy who you mentioned, Tim, named Ryan Jackson, the pride of the U of Miami, and this guy is a phenomenal baseball player. He spent the past couple of seasons in the farm system. He did see some minor action in 2012 in 13 games, but then again, it's only he barely got any playing time, so we cannot really understand the full capabilities of what Ryan Jackson can prove. But in the farm system, this is a guy that can go out there who has some great pop for a shortstop. He can go out there and get you about 12 home runs a year. This guy has hit 10 home runs in 2012 and 11 home runs in 2011. I have high expectations for Ryan Jackson to really come into this season and ultimately outplay Pete Kozma, because even though he does have a good fielding arm, he's not reliable at the plate. He really has got to step up a whole lot if this is going to be a full-time thing for Kozma over at shortstop.
Yeah, and Rafael Furcal, the problem throughout the course of his entire career has always been staying healthy And I liked him a lot since watching him in his days in Atlanta, over to LA, and then over to St. Louis. He's been a productive player when he can stay healthy. He started off the season last year on a tear, but he just cannot stay healthy. He's out for this year after surgery from Dr. James Andrews, and that may very well end his career. We don't know at this point, so we'll wait and see with him. Pete Cosman's a guy that, like Justin said, I like him as a backup. I think he is an MLB-level backup, but he's not an MLB-level starter. The Cardinals have been able to have success pulling in some of these guys that coming into the year we don't think that they're good enough. I didn't think last year Alan Craig was going to be good enough as a full-time starter over at first base, and I was wrong, but I'm just not sure Pete Kozma is going to be at that level. Now, David Freese is going to miss a very small amount of time to begin the season, probably the first 7 to 10 games on the 15-day DL because he was placed on retroactive last week. So as he gets back into the groove of things, it shouldn't be too long that David Freese is out for. Matt Carpenter, who stepped up big for the Cardinals in the playoffs last year, he will be a guy that gets a look as the starter to begin the year. Last year, Carpenter in 114 games hit .294 with 6 home runs, 46 RBIs, so it's a very good bench piece you have with Carpenter. He brings a pretty solid glove over at third base. He's more of a first baseman, but I feel pretty comfortable heading into the year with him beginning the season for a short amount of time. And then David Freese coming back. David Freese last year, after winning World Series MVP 2 years ago, Freese came back last year and he just proved that he was a guy that long-term is going to be a very good third baseman in the MLB. It was not a fluke. He had .293 with 20 home runs and 79 RBIs. So, Justin, they have 2 guys over at third base, and then they also have Ty Wigginton as an option. They have 2 guys in Carpenter and Freese that are solid third basemen, and I like what they have over there at third base. And when they play these American League teams, which now with interleague play all year, you'll see a bit more of that. Matt Carpenter is going to be a solid DH option for this team.
Yeah, I mean, I like the whole, what's going on at third base right now because it's only a short amount of time for Matt Carpenter over at third base because Daniel Descalso, I have a good feeling that Daniel Descalso is going to move over to shortstop, and then you can put Matt Carpenter over at second because, Pete Kozma, he's not reliable a whole lot. I mean, I'm not here to bash on you guys, but, he's not reliable a whole lot. He's a bench piece. He's a guy that can come in for pinch running, and that's pretty much what he's going to be used for in his MLB career. But the biggest option is right now when David Freese comes back, you're going to have Freese back over at third. You have Carpenter over at second. You have Descalso at shortstop because Daniel Descalso is a great infielder. So that's pretty much the big forte over there in putting Descalso over there at shortstop. Matt Carpenter really surprised me in the beginning parts of the season where he came out of nowhere in one game. He really made headlines going 4 for 4, I think against the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he just played phenomenal out of his mind last season. His average was really high, batted .294 last year. I have a lot of expectations for him. He's a multi-position player. He's overall a great baseball player. Has a great glove. Has the power for a shortstop. And overall, he's gonna be playing over at third base. So let's just see. We'll just hope that David Freese does not have any setbacks, and Freese can get back into the groove of things, so that he can get back into being the everyday third baseman for the team. But if he does have a setback, Matt Carpenter is that number 1 guy to come in and fill in the role over at third base.
Yeah, he is going to be that option as a backup. I'm not sure if he could transition over to second base. We will see. And then Ty Wigginton, who will bring some pop, and that's about it. He will be a backup. He really is a mess over at third base, though. So you don't want to have him out in the field. You want him as a pinch hitter on this team. And that's what I think their plans for him are. Matt Holliday is going to start on left, and while Holliday got extremely bailed out in that playoffs last year because that infield fly call against the Atlanta Braves, which I will never let die, Matt Holliday, that was his fault. He should have made that play, called David Freese. It was either David Freese or Pete Kozma playing short at that point. He should have called whoever it was off, made the play, and then that whole situation never would have happened. It would have been the second time that him dropping a ball or misplaying a ball in left field cost the Cardinals a playoff series. Instead, he kind of got bailed out, and that doesn't go against him in his career. But I like him at the plate nonetheless. In 157 games last year, he hit .295 with 27 home runs, 102 RBIs. He really, at this point, with Albert Pujols gone, is the guy that is the big power bat in this lineup, and he needs to stay healthy and continue to produce this season.
Absolutely, as long as those moths don't get into his ear like it happened last year. I mean, that was pretty hilarious. But Matt Holliday, overall, a phenomenal outfielder, a phenomenal hitter. Last year, 27 home runs, 102 RBIs. This guy, year in and year out, will get you up to that 295 to 300 batting average. And that is phenomenal. It was a great pickup for the St. Louis Cardinals to get him from the Oakland Athletics. And you know what? I overall like it. I think Matt Holliday, he's going to be worth the contract extension here pretty soon because he's overall a great outfielder, plays great defensive baseball, can produce at the plate. And overall, he's at home in left field. And you know what? I love Matt Carpenter over there in St. Louis.
Now, Matt Holliday in left field has the option of having Matt Carpenter as a backup as well. So that's the thing that this Cardinals team likes is not only can he play both corner infield positions, he can play second base, and then he can also play the outfield as well. So Matt Carpenter is going to be very valuable to this team. Alan Craig is another option as a backup, and but again, he's going to be playing first base. So for the most part, you're going to see either Matt Holliday or on an off day, you'll see Matt Carpenter once David Freese is back. John Jay is going to be the starting center fielder for the Cardinals. Jay last year hit .305 with 19 stolen bases. He doesn't bring a ton of pop, but he's a guy that will get on base for you and make some nice plays out in center field. John Jay's another nice piece that this team has found. And then backing him up, Justin, are two of our favorite players in the MLB. We'll begin with Shane Robinson, who last year hit .253 with 3 home runs. And then the pride of H4 TV, Adron Chambers, who last year in 41 games hit .222. I've seen potential in Adron Chambers in the field and as a pinch runner because in the minor leagues he's been a guy that can steal bases, but overall at the plate he's never been someone that's thrilled me.
Yeah, a guy who is the pride of Pensacola Junior College out down there in Florida. Got to give them a shout out for the development of Adron Chambers to the Cardinals. Adron Chambers, yeah, Tim, I agree with you. He's not reliable really at the plate. This is a guy who won't get on the bases. When not the fastest runner in Major League Baseball, like a guy like Alan Craig, Matt Carpenter. He's just pretty one of those guys that can come in and just go out there and steal you the bases. And for right now, that's going to be his main role over there in St. Louis. Now, Shane Robinson is a guy who I've had a lot of praise for when he was with the Memphis Redbirds, which is the AAA affiliate. And this guy really surprised me. Well, he's not going to get you a lot of home runs, but he gives you a solid average. He's really just that guy who the Cardinals really put down the minor league farm system, just waiting for him to really shine up at the major league level. It could be this month, it could be that month. But you know what? This team is always healthy in the outfield. Carpenter, John Jay, Carlos Beltran a little bit. And overall, Shane Robinson is still one of those guys that's a work in progress for the team. For John Jay, John Jay's phenomenal. He has that great glove. He will give you a solid average, over the past 3 seasons since 2010. Batted .300 that year, batted .340, or batted .297 2011, and then 2012 batted .305. So he's year in and year out will probably end up getting a solid maybe 295 to 300 in that criteria. Will get you on average about 5 or 6 home runs a year. 2011 when he really broke out, got 10 home runs that year. But I don't expect for him to really reach higher than 11 home runs, 12 home runs a year in his career.
I don't either. Now, Carlos Beltran in right field is a guy that I'm somewhat concerned about heading into this year because he hit 32 home runs last year, but prior to that, his power was not at that level anymore. That was the most home runs that he had hit since 2007. I think that to expect him to hit 32 home runs again, that's not likely. However, he hit .269 last year. I want to see him get that average back up to the guy that a couple years ago had 300 between the Mets and the Giants, and then even prior to that, he is someone that has hit for a pretty high average for a lot of years in his career. So I want to see him get that average back at least to the 280, 290 range. Expect about 25 to 30 home runs, not quite 32. And he had a tremendously fast start last year. I just don't anticipate he's going to be quite as good as he was last year.
Off camera, Tim, we talked about, the whole deal with the San Francisco Giants. The Giants got pretty much of a dud out of him, so that's pretty much why they gave him away over to St. Louis. And he's just really producing well with the Cardinals. His average wasn't really as high in his first full season with the Cardinals, where he batted, 269 last year. There's a guy over the past couple of seasons has hit, 300, 323. I honestly do not know where his average is really going to be this year, but his power totals is pretty solid, even at his age, even though he is, 35 years old. He's aging fast. But his power numbers is just phenomenal. 32 home runs last year, a 10 home run difference from the season prior where he hit 22. If his power numbers keep on going up, his average is just my big course of concern for Carlos
Yeah,
Beltran.
and I do want to make sure that I say that Carlos Beltran's a guy that has had injury problems throughout the course of his career. For the last 2 years, it's kind of gone away, but that's something that you do want to watch out for. Now, looking over to this starting rotation, we will begin with the new $97 million man, Adam Wainwright, and I was extremely critical of that extension because last year Wainwright was a guy that was 14-13 with a 3.94 ERA. That's almost a 4 ERA. I know he had an extremely slow start and came on strong in the second half, but the bottom line is that he only came on strong enough to finish with a 3.94 ERA. That's almost a 4 ERA. The season before that, he was out with Tommy John surgery, and yes, in 2009 and 2010, he was one of the top 5 pitchers in the game, no doubt about it. But you can't pay a guy for the next 5 years the amount of money that they just paid him and say, well, we know he's going to get back to that form of 2009 or 2010. He's on the wrong side of age 30, and he's someone that, while he came on strong in the second half, again, he ended up with an ERA close to 4. That, to me, is not worth the amount of money that he got. And am I saying that he couldn't return to the form that he once was at? No, but the extension timing just didn't make a ton of sense for me.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's really not worth it for right now because, like you said, with the Tommy John surgery in 2011, missing the entire year, in 2012, we all know that whole story. His ERA was close to 4. He's just currently not worth that money. Is he worth a contract extension? Absolutely. He's not worth, the $98, $95 million contract he just got from the Cardinals. Absolutely not. Excuse me. Adam Wainwright is a guy who, if I was to lay some big money out on the table for me, I would literally just give him, 3 to 4 years, not worth 95, maybe around, 50.
75, 80, I think is right now.
Yeah.
I think 75.
95 is a little bit too much.
Based off how he pitched last year, I think giving him an extension right now, it just didn't make the most sense. If he ends up having go ahead.
The 5 years, the years are correct, but the money that they just dished out on him, put it in that suitcase for him, be like, okay, here, now you just go out there and get back to the form that you were. That is seriously just not how to do it. I think that he was really overpaid, and you know what? If he really goes out there and proves me wrong, I'm taking everything back.
Yeah.
But overall, right now, I am not really 100%. My sights are not really on Adam Wainwright this year. He really, if he does go out there, I will take everything back.
Yeah, and he's a guy that if he ends up pitching at anywhere close to the level he did in 2009 or 2010, then the Cardinals are going to look they're going to look genius because he would have ended up making more than the $97 million they gave. But what if he doesn't? What if he's a guy that ends up having similar numbers to last year's, inconsistent, and has an ERA at 3.70? Are you telling me then that he's worth close to $100 million? Because the bottom line is that he is not. We'll wait and see with Adam Wainwright. I think he will have a bounce-back year, but I'm still not sure it's going to be enough to make him worth that amount of money that they gave him in the extension. Jake Westbrook's going to be the guy at number 2. Westbrook is a guy that I think is more of a back end of the rotation guy. Had a 3.97 ERA. He's a veteran pitcher, having spent most of his career with the Cleveland Indians. Justin, I look at Lance Lynn, who at number 3, who was 18-7 with a 3.78 ERA, had a much better first half than the second half last year. But I look at him as a better number 2 option. And even Jaime Garcia, who had a rough year last year with a 3.92 ERA. But prior to that, he was extremely impressive in 2009 and 2010. I look at them as better number 2 options than Jake Westbrook at this point.
I am not. My sights are not really set on Jake Westbrook. Coming over from the Cleveland Indians, he really had his ERA wasn't really where it's at in 2011, but his win-loss criteria was also not really good, so it wasn't really that great of a first year for him in St. Louis. And then 2012 is just another average year for him. His ERA did drop down a whole lot, but you know what? I don't know why the Cardinals are not saying, okay, let's look at the other guys that we have in this rotation that is going to be 10 times better and that is going to have a better career than Jake Westbrook. I'm not trying to, diss on Jake Westbrook, but when you look at it, the time is now. If this team is really going to go out there and make a charge for a World Series, you've got to understand, you've got to reposition this pitching rotation. Lance Lynn should be that number 2, a guy that really wowed us all last year. And, I talked to the pride of H4 TV, Jack McNeil, that, Lance Lynn is more deserving to be that number 2, and not Jake Westbrook. Jake Westbrook on any MLB roster right now in the rotation is either a number 3 or at worst a number 4. Lance Lynn is deserving of that number 2. Jaime Garcia, I still have a lot of hopes for him. Last year, it wasn't really the greatest outing for him. In 2011, he had a 13-7 record, and then in 2012, in 20 games, I think he was actually injured for a portion of the year. He went 7-7 with a 3.92 ERA. It just wasn't there. But Jaime Garcia, he's still young, still coming up through Major League Baseball, a guy who has a nasty pitching arsenal. Give him that number 3 spot. Give Lance Lynn number 2, and then you got the overpaid starting pitcher on this roster, Adam Wainwright at number 1.
Now, the final guy to round out this rotation, Justin, is going to be Shelby Miller. Miller's a young guy in the minor leagues last year with Memphis at AAA. He pitched to an 11-10 record with a 4.74 ERA, which to me was disappointing because we both talked about Shelby Miller in the minor leagues at AA and Single A. He was extremely successful in 2011, going 11-6 with a 2.77 ERA. At the MLB level last year, when he came up, he was mostly a bullpen guy. Got a chance to make one start. Went 1-0 with a 1.32 ERA. So, Justin, I think that 2012 at the AAA level, he struggled, but that's not what I expect to see out of Shelby Miller long term.
I was also talking to Jack about this because he's really that, Cardinals expert here, and he really did give me some good advice about, Shelby Miller. He's still an up-and-coming guy, in the farm system. He went 9-3 in 2011 with the Springfield Cardinals. And overall, he has some nasty stuff to the team, so he's not a bad option at number 5. Another guy that me and Jack talked about was Trevor Rosenthal, who is overall a nasty farm system pitcher. He's really going to get his opportunity in the Cardinals team, more likely in the bullpen to start the season. Last year he really did not get off to a good start, but if you watch this guy's, film, he is nasty. His arsenal is phenomenal. His fastball is just insanely impressive. Trevor Rosenthal is the guy his Cardinals team has a lot of praise on, and he could be actually a number 5, or even at best he could be a number 4. Somewhere down in this rotation. But at the top of the line here, Lance Lynn, Jaime Garcia, and Jake Westbrook. It's just that Cardinals are really set on for these 3 guys at 2, 3, and 4.
Now, the bullpen has really improved since this was the team in 2009 or 2011 when they won the World Series, that the bullpen was not really that good. They have Mark Rybczynski now, Randy Choate, Edward Mojica, and then Mitchell Boggs, who will actually begin the season as closer because Jason Mott will begin the season on a DL with a mild muscle flexor strain. So beginning with Mitchell Boggs, who again will begin the year as closer, I feel pretty comfortable with him beginning the year as closer. Had a solid season last year, going 4-1 with a 2.21 ERA. For the most part, he is going to end up being the setup man though, and then that will push Jason Mott back into the closer's role. Mott last year saved 42 games. He did blow 7 attempts, but when you are in almost 50 save attempts, you're going to end up blowing some saves. So I kind of give him a little leeway there. Is he one of the best closers in the game? I don't know if I'd put him there just because of the amount of blown saves, but he is someone that has gotten a lot better over the course of the last couple years as an MLB closer. Has become a lot more consistent, and I like Jason Mott as the closer for this team. So Justin, all this taken into account, where do you see the Cardinals in 2013?
You know what? Taking this into account, I actually think that the Pittsburgh Pirates could squeeze into number 2 in this. It's going to come down to the final couple of weeks of the season. The Cardinals do have a bright future ahead of them. I know Pete Kozma is my biggest concern. David Freese, he's going to be coming out the DL. But when you look at the Pittsburgh Pirates, this team has really drastically improved over the past season, with the full production of Andrew McCutchen. This team is overall a phenomenal team. Not taking anything away from the St. Louis Cardinals. They have Alan Craig, Yadier Molina, Matt Holliday. I just think that the Cardinals have overall, in the final part of the season, they're going to outplay the St. Louis Cardinals and take number 2 in this division. I think the Cardinals will end up at number 3 this year. Adam Wainwright's my biggest course of concern. Is he going to have an issue with his arm? I know Tommy John surgery, the disappointing last season. Let's just hope that, he can have it and the Cardinals can really prove me wrong. When it comes down to the later guys, Jake Westbrook, he's not really reliable. Lance Lynn is more deserving of that number 2. There are some, issues in the starting rotation right now with just Adam Wainwright making that big headline. I think overall what I'm trying to say here is that I have Pirates number 2. I have the Cardinals in 3rd place.
Justin, I couldn't agree more. I think that for sure this is the Reds division, and then you're going to see the Pirates in 2nd place in this division. The Cardinals are a team that this year, I think they're about an 84, 85 win team. It's not going to be an unwatchable year. They're going to be in the race, I think, for a lot of the year. But overall, with no Chris Carpenter for the full year, not sure what you're going to get out of Adam Wainwright. And then I think some guys like Alan Craig and Carlos Beltran, while they'll still have good years, I don't think they'll repeat what they did last year. So I think this is a team that is a 3rd place team in this NL Central. Leave us your thoughts in the comments below. For now, I'm Tim Kelly with Justin Godsey. We'll see you guys later.